You know who I am, Gary, Director of Student Experience. I'm here really to introduce a whole range of initiatives at the college. I felt it would be useful to give you some indication of what we're attempting to do around the student services agenda, based largely upon the issue of the 9,000 world that Steve Large mentioned earlier today. But can I be quite frank with you? I don't care about the 9K world. We should be doing this anyway. We should be offering a high quality student experience regardless of whether the students are paying 9,000 or 3,000. So again, although I'm setting it within the context of finance, I really am thinking that this is something any good, decent university should be trying to achieve. I just want to reiterate what everyone this morning has been saying. We've been sat here at King's awaiting this 9K world, thinking how will it change the nature of students? How will it change the nature of what we deliver? What should we be doing to change and refocus the student services portfolio? We know that there's an increased demand for coherent, consistent and high quality experience. We know that students' expectations are already significantly heightened. I'm sure if you go back to your institutions as well, the demand for extended opening hours, the demand for more flexible access, the demand for 24/7 library opening, everyone is becoming far more demanding around the portfolio and the nature of the services that we deliver. This issue about the consumer ethos, we mentioned the student as a customer. Now, some people question that philosophy, but I think it's something worth thinking about. The student as a customer, the student as a partner, but this definite push for more focused approach. The student as the consumer, the student voting with their feet if they don't get the high quality service that they expect. And I'll be exploring that later on this afternoon with you. A big thing for the college too is looking very carefully at the structure of our students and education support service. How do we embrace the entire journey from recruitment through to graduation? What is their experience? How can we make sure that it's joined up? And we've done a lot of work rethinking the nature of our structures here at the college, and I'll be showing you what we've done to date. We were quite nervous about the £9,000 world because we're aware that, you know, there are diverse expectations from a very, very diverse student community. And we were worried about how possibly can we meet everyone's expectations. 24,000 students, undergraduate population, a taught graduate population, a research graduate population, part-time students, distance learning. So there is no such thing as the student experience. It doesn't exist. The student experience is entirely personal for the individual. And how we can actually manage expectation and deliver coherent services is something that we really have grappled with here at King's. We have huge challenges too. We're a multi-campus university. So we're spread over a very large area. It's very difficult, therefore, to create a sense of community in a university so big. And of course, we've got the London factor. We've got the opportunities of living in London, but also the threats of living in London. The issue of anonymity, the issue of living in a large urban setting, and all the pressure that that can actually place on a young student coming to university for the first time. And parents, one of the most astounding changes of the past year is the number of parental inquiries that we're starting to get at King's. I gave a presentation to about 1,500 to 2,000 parents just before the beginning of term over a whole weekend. Roomfuls of parents coming in. And I was quite shocked by the way their expectations have changed. They wanted to know how personal tutors worked, who would be offering pastoral care to their students, who would offer financial advice to their students, even to the point where I'm sometimes requested by parents to intervene and access their daughter or son's bank account because they're worried about their financial welfare while they're here. So we've got a big issue around the contract between the student and the college, this issue of who is managing who, and this issue of pastoral care, health and well-being. And I will say, pastoral care, health and well-being is increasingly the paradigm that is developing here at the college around how we make student satisfaction work in London. Another big issue too is about collective ownership of the student experience. It's a support issue, it's a non-academic issue, it's an academic issue. How do we control that? People have different visions of the student experience. The student experience can be focused onto 3 areas, which I'll be presenting in more detail later. But with this issue of outcome, you can say if you get a degree, that's a good student experience. But what about the issue of engagement, how students actually interact with staff in student services? How do we get that right? So we're looking at that very carefully. We need to make sure there's a buy-in to cultural change across the university. We all need to be in this together. Now, we've mentioned already we're a Russell Group university, so we're very research intensive. And the worry here is it's the Russell Group universities which tend to score very low in National Student Survey for satisfaction. But invariably, you've got this continual dichotomy, conflict between teaching and learning support, satisfaction, and the need for research-intensive work. How do we get that right? In the UK, in 12 months or so, can't remember when exactly, we're about to go into what's called the Research Excellence Framework, the REF, which essentially is crucial to our income going forwards. How we get the balance right between that project and student projects is a major issue for the college. So student support services, I would argue, are absolutely integral to the student journey. Someone made a very poignant comment a few years ago, that students probably spend more time in the library or in the canteen than they do actually in the classroom. So people underestimate the importance of the support portfolio in the college. So what we're really trying to do is gear up and work with the academics to make that work well. So understanding that the post-9K student, we sat down and thought, well, what will their expectations be? How can we manage them? Not just that though, but there's a disconnect in a lot of universities between branding and reality. So in other words, they look through our prospectus, beautiful pictures, wonderful venue. What happens when they get here? Does it match their expectations? And how can we work to ensure that it does in future? In London too, we have the problem of what we call the show and tell syndrome. A King's College London student talking in a pub to a University College London student will say, well, we get that for free at UCL. Why do you charge for it at King's? Why is the library open at LSE for 24 hours and not open at King's for 24 hours? So we've got this huge pressure continually around students coming to us and demanding further information and improvements all around the clock. And I think too the impact of 9,000 already is beginning to show. The first week of term this year, 120 students presented to our counselling service with financial worries that they wanted addressing. 120 in a week. So something is definitely going on, and we really need to explore how we can service those requirements. Very quickly, there was a lifestyle survey last year, 2012, and students were actually interviewed about why they came to college, what their expectations were. And undoubtedly, the outcome is key. The employability agenda that Laura mentioned earlier is key. They want a job. They want a well-paid job. So if we get that right, that's ticking one very large box around the student experience. But what was intriguing too was the non-academic factors. 53% said that they came because of a good impression at the open day. So that's largely about engagement, and I think that's the most difficult thing to pin down in the student satisfaction area. How can we improve our engagement with students? The notion of physiology, the geographical location, is obviously very key. People want to come to London, they want to come to a big capital city, but they also want a friendly atmosphere. They want to belong. So we really are grappling with how we can try and achieve that in such a complicated university. The impact of 9K is rather intriguing. 51% said they wanted more from the lecturers, 49% said they wanted more paid work, 22% wanted work experience, 18% said they wanted more out of sporting and health and lifestyle within the college, social sort of events. So it's obvious to me that an element of the student experience we need to build into the student services support portfolio is around health, well-being, pastoral care. And we can't avoid that. That has to be looked at fairly quickly. How do you present that all to 24,000 students is another issue, and I'd be very keen to get some ideas from you on that. So what did we do? In response to this pressure around funding, we decided that we wanted to completely restructure our directorate. So we created the Directorate of Students and Education Support. And that directorate essentially is meant to guide the student through the entire journey, the life cycle being at the college. From the moment that they're enrolled, which we'll be talking about later, right the way through to the moment they've graduated, we've developed a very cohesive new directorate to make it absolutely intuitive about where the students go in order to find information that they need. So what we wanted was a directorate, which would be a filter, a membrane, if you like, between professional services at the centre and the academic community. Someone who could broker their requirements and shape the service accordingly. We also wanted a directorate where agility and multi-skilling was key, where people could, for example, start off as a librarian in the directorate and then move to student services and develop their career pathway. So we're looking carefully at how we can develop competencies around support. You won't be able to see that very clearly. This is just for your information. This gives you a breakdown of the structure. It's already slightly out of date, but essentially what we have here is the whole process of quality through to legal compliance, through to student administration. And I have representatives talking today and tomorrow across every key area. So by the end of this visit, you'll have a good understanding of what projects we're undertaking to make this directorate work. I think the fact that we created a role around student experience is an issue where we are definitely in HE moving towards getting to grips with what exactly do we mean by student experience, who's coordinating it, and how can we manage it better. As a directorate, we've formed a number of strategic aims, and they're all reiterated in the PowerPoint. I won't go over all of them, but we're about to publish a students and education support strategy, which will give the college an opportunity to reflect on exactly the direction that we need to go in order to be competitive and to offer a good student experience. So we've actually based it on a number of assumptions. We've agreed that we're committed to delivering consistent, rewarding, outstanding total experience in a research-intensive environment. We've recognised that there's no single student experience at King's. Services have to be responsive, they have to be personal. But we've also agreed that learning and professional development is a shared responsibility. So we've launched a student charter which quite clearly makes the student realise that they're not passive in this process, that they have ownership of the student experience as much as the academic community. It has to be a joint effort. Recognised in this is that the personal tutor infrastructure is key. And we've published recently, which I think is in your guide, your handout, a personal tutor guide which reiterates to the academic community exactly what we want to do to deliver a more outstanding student experience. We're working closely with the Students' Union. Again, we have a presentation from the President, Thomas, later on, around how we can improve collaboration and engagement. How can we ensure that that dialogue between the student community and the support teams is ongoing and relevant? And we're committed to developing the health and wellbeing portfolio to an extent where we've only just recently, mid last year, actually identified and employed a head of health and active lifestyles, in the understanding that sport and wellbeing and health is a key priority moving forwards. And again, more strategic aims here, continual service enhancement through engagement, feedback, effective use of information to ensure that we build an evidence-based portfolio of high-quality services. So what exactly are we doing? Now, some of this will be presented in much more depth by other speakers, so I won't go into too much detail. We set up a series of working groups to look at the whole process. Induction, registration. What does the welcome look like for a King's student? And we, started to rethink how we could improve it, how we could make it, more interesting, how we could review publications and the provision of information. We set up a group looking at personal tutoring. How can we ensure that academics in the college community understand the wealth of welfare information that's available for the students? We had working groups for international students. What is the international student experience? what are we offering at King's? We did some soul searching around how we can specifically improve in that area. We set up a group for part-time and distance learning students. What was their experience? Obviously, distance learning is heavily based around the web, how we can improve our content and delivery. Disabled students and the health and wellbeing agenda. We initiated a student communications review. Again, I think what came up this morning is communications with the student body is fundamental. Invariably, if you get the communications right, the rest will actually follow. But the world is changing. The tools that students are using to communicate are... No one's using email anymore. How can we review and improve the communications strategy for students? And again, we've done some work on that. We've looked at social media, and tomorrow you will be given a presentation from a colleague who will show you how we have worked towards rethinking communication within the college around sort of corporate networking. And again, that will happen tomorrow. We've looked at customer service. Now, this sounds awful when you say customer service, but what is the experience of the average student who goes into a cafe or a library at King's College? How are they treated? What is the philosophy of care that we offer? Do we have a philosophy at King's College London? So again, that will be the presentation I'll give you later on today. The biggest project of all I wanted to mention is our integrated student services project. You may have come across the notion of convergence in many of your universities already, or indeed super convergence. What we're trying to do at King's is to bring together front-facing student services teams into a one visible integrated entity so that students find it far easier to navigate the very complicated areas of support in the college, and I'll be spending some time talking on that. And a range of other stuff around careers and web services, which I won't go into too much detail on today. So integrated student service, the notion, can I just have a show of hands? You're all aware of the notion of convergence, aren't you? In most universities, convergence tends to focus around IT and libraries working very closely together, but increasingly it's about working extensively with other amalgamated sections of the department. So IT, working with library, AV, careers and so forth, counselling and the relationship with healthcare. So what we've been looking at is how we can gradually fuse and amalgamate some of these services in a visible way, not only on the web, but physically. So when students walk into a building, they're faced not by a disparate number of frontline, but actually one cohesive frontline of staff. It's been a really difficult project to deliver. We published a blueprint and we decided that a library was the social hub of a university. So that most students go into a library, so why not move all of the welfare information into the library as well? So we've done that. This also has helped because it reduces the pressure on the academic community. It's far easier for an academic to say, go to the library and you'll get all the information you need. So it's beginning to work. It's a bit of social engineering, fairly complicated, but the project is actually beginning to take off really well. Part of integrated student service philosophy is that gradually you merge the skills. You create a front line of staff who are so knowledgeable, who understand the anatomy of the organisation so well that they become much better at referral and so forth. And that's a huge thing to do in such a complicated organisation. We're looking at outreach and customer relationship management, how we train our frontline teams to understand how to behave in a polite, friendly, knowledgeable context. So we're feeding heavily into a number of initiatives by doing this and beginning the quite slow process of actually re-engineering the student experience. So at King's, what we did, we published a blueprint saying this is our vision for all frontline student services. Everything at King's in terms of student welfare, we have a frontline team called the Compass. And I think in your pack you've got lots of information about that. And the notion of the Compass is it becomes the point of contact for all frontline queries. And the point of the Compass is students can go wherever they need to. There can be a Compass at this campus, at the Strand. Wherever you go at King's, there will be a Compass and there will be a team of staff who will understand your requirements. And if they can't answer the query, they will refer you to a specialist who can. So it's a continual process of triage and training to make this work. There were 4 key work streams that we identified to make this happen. Not all of them are complete. The first one is actually probably the most complicated: query referral. How do you ensure that you're effectively responding to a query? How do you ensure that a particular query has been resolved, closed down, that the student's satisfied, that it is not escalated into another problem? So we're looking carefully at the IT infrastructure required to do that well. In order to have a frontline team co-located in a library, you have to look very carefully at the HR issues, looking at more flexible working, revising competency profiles for particular roles, and so on. So a big HR work stream here. We've started the phase 1 of a service catalogue, which sounds rather grand, but essentially building up a thorough knowledge of first, second, and third line support. So, I walk into a library, I'm depressed, I say I want to see a counsellor, a light bulb goes off in the frontline desk, they know exactly where to go, they know whether there's a second tier of support to triage it, potentially before it's escalated to another colleague. So getting that right has taken quite a lot of work around how you begin to build that knowledge of the institution. And I think Laura and Mackenzie alluded to the fact that King's is a hugely complicated area. We have a Directorate of Students in Education Support, but outside that directorate, there are lots more student support services which we need to bring in and be aware of. So we're continually doing that. And the big issue, workforce development, training, upskilling, continual professional development for all of our frontline teams to ensure that they are updated, trained, continually as part of the process. How am I doing? I'm nearly there. Good stuff, well timed. Second thing is student communications. I won't spend too long on this, but I just wanted to give you some indication that if you're interested in the student communications angle, I'm more than willing to send you some detailed review documentations. But we literally looked at the entire portfolio of support for student comms, how we communicated with students, how they preferred that we would communicate with students. And it was actually really quite intriguing. We wanted to ensure that they were aware of all the services on offer, and invariably they weren't. Invariably they were confused. They very rarely read their email. So we thought, how can we get around this? So we've been working and building on a support service there. We wanted to use communications to build community. Students, multi-campus, how can we try and create a King's unified experience? And part of the comms review is trying to look at how we do that. Better managing student expectation on arrival. What can we do to ensure that the information they get before they arrive here is relevant and up to date? Intriguingly, one thing we haven't done yet as well as we would like to have done is actually made sure that we target the parents long before the students actually arrive here with a parental handbook or something which will give the parents more understanding of what we're trying to do. But we're hoping that we can use the parents to reinforce the message around welfare and so on. And again, going back to the presentation I gave to parents over a weekend a few months ago, they were so relieved when I said that we offered a whole range of welfare and support for their students. They felt that they could hand their student over to a London university and we would actually look after them. So there's a lot of work going on with communications, and I can share that review with you. This is just an overview of the satisfaction rate. We were quite concerned, very happy with library communications, but gradually, as you further down, finance, residential services, timetabling, they were quizzed on a whole range of services to see how well knowledgeable they were around what we were trying to achieve there. Some really good stuff. A part of the review, they said our student communications were uncoordinated, fragmented, confused, but at the same time personal, diverse. I love voluminous, which is an interesting one. But what we're trying to do now is to build a strategy, an action plan for absolutely overhauling the student communications channels and communication. And again, Bernadette tomorrow will be giving you an overview of that in a bit more detail. Because I'm aware of time, I'm going to stop there because, as you know, we've got a pretty heavy afternoon ahead of us.